Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and in today's video I'm going to share with you a Christmas card that I made with the Mama Elephant, the Penguins Waddle stamp set. This card is part of a blog hop with giveaways, so stay tuned because I will tell you guys more about it during the video. But for now, let's focus on how I actually created this really adorable card. I started by stamping the main image in the Penguins Waddle stamp set on some Neenah Solar White 110 pounds cardstock using my Spectrum Noir alcohol-proof ink. This is in the color Noir Black, and the reason why I'm using this ink is that I will be doing some coloring with my Illustrator markers, which are alcohol-based. I'm using my Mini Misty to stamp the image so that I can go ahead and stamp it multiple times with precision so that I get a nice and crisp impression. And then I can go ahead and start coloring the images. As I mentioned, for that I'm using my Illustrator markers by Spectrum Noir, and I started by coloring all the penguins. I'm going to first color this one penguin here so that I can tell you which color palette I used. And then I actually am going to color the rest of the penguins a little bit differently, but I'll show you later. So for the part of the penguin that I wanted to be black, I used some cool gray markers. I used IG10, IG8, IG6, and IG4. I'm adding my shading as if the light was coming from the top right of the screen. So I have my highlight on the head of the penguin on the right side, and the darkest shadows are on the left side of its body. For the faces and the bellies of the penguins, I decided to try something a little bit different, and instead of shading them with some light gray markers, I decided to use some skin tones. I used FS6, FS7, and FS8. I made sure to leave some white areas, and I blended my markers towards those white areas with my colorless blender. And then for the beak, I used BO3 and GY2. I then started coloring the rest of the penguins, and for that I colored in sections. This is what I meant before when I was saying that I colored the first penguin in a bit of a different way than the others. Because right now I'm going to color all the bodies, so all the areas that are black, all at once. And then I'm going to move on and I'm going to color in all the faces and the bodies with those skin tones. And then last I'm going to fill in the beaks with those orange markers. I chose to proceed this way because it was a little bit faster and a little bit more organized, so to say. I enjoy coloring very much, so I wasn't really trying to rush through the coloring process. On the contrary, I really enjoyed it because the stamp set is so adorable. But I just wanted to make the process a little bit more seamless and a little bit more effective. And also having just 3-4 markers to quote-unquote deal with at once makes things a little bit easier, I feel. And while I finished coloring these images, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the blog hop that this card is part of. Mama Elephant is celebrating 7 years this September, and they came out with an absolutely wonderful release. This stamp set here is one of the new sets, and I really suggest that you check them all out because they are really cute. I have the honor and the privilege to be part of this blog hop because one of my cards was selected as a runners-up to the Mama Elephant Top Card Contest, which was held on Instagram in July. You will find a link to that card on my Instagram profile in the description box down below. And if you don't already, you can follow me there too, because I share a lot of card making inspiration also on my Instagram, and some of those cards you will not find here on YouTube. Coming back to the blog hop, to celebrate the new release and their 7th anniversary, Mama Elephant is giving away 10 $25 gift certificates to their store. There are also discounts and freebies, and the more you spend, the more freebies you get. You will find all the details in the blog post that will be linked in the description box down below, so make sure to check that out. And now that I am basically done coloring the penguins, we can move on and talk a little bit about the color palette that I chose for their accessories. I decided to use teal blues, lilacs, and magentas. I started from the blue colors, and the markers that I used are BT9, BT7, and BT3. And the way I go about coloring a stamp set like this is I start from one of the colors that I choose. I like to keep my color palettes limited when I'm using bright colors, so that is why I have 3 colors going on this card. So I pick the first color and I lay it down in 3 different areas. And basically what I'm doing is I am building a visual triangle which will help with the composition, and triangles always work. So whenever you're in doubt, go for triangles. Once I'm done laying down my first color in 3 spots, which are in different positions and at different heights on my scene, I'm going to move on and use my second set of markers. This will be MG5, MG3, and MG1. And I'm going to add them to 3 different spots. And already now I am starting to fill in all the accessories and the scene, and I'm starting to get a feel for where I want my colors to be. So at this point, for example, I felt I wanted my magenta to be also on the top right of the scene, so I added it to the hat on this little penguin. And then before adding any more of the colors I have already going on my card, I moved on and started adding my purples. These are LV3, HB3, and HB1, which I later on switched for HB2, but you can use either of them. Actually, it doesn't make too big of a difference. I decided to use the purples to color in the hat, the coffee cup, and this scarf here. And then I could already see that the purple would go nicely on the other scarf on the rightmost column of penguins. I'm going to add my shading, always keeping the darkest shadows on the left part of the images and my highlights on the right part of the images. And then at this point, I can go ahead and finish coloring the rest of the accessories. And the further you go along with the coloring process, the easier it is to get a feel for which color would go nicely in which area. Here, for example, I was coloring the fish in pink and purple because I knew that I was going to use my teal blues for the fish bows and for the water. I'm trying not to add any other colors to this scene because I want to keep the color palette limited. The only exception is the BT1, which is just a lighter shade of the blues that I already have going on my images. And I'm going to use the BT1 to color in the fish bows as well as the glasses on that penguin on the top left. Actually, I will just realize later on that I skipped the glasses completely, so I will come back in and color them. I am adding some shading with my BT3 marker to the bows so that they look like they are nice and rounded. And then once the coloring was over, I could go ahead and use the coordinating dies to the mama elephant, the penguins Waddle stamp set to die cut all the penguins at once. At this point, I moved on to the background, which I kept pretty simple. I did some blending with my Distress Oxides in Shaded Lilac and Blueprint Sketch, as I felt that this color combination matched nicely with the colors that I have on the penguins' accessories. I'm using my foam blenders to blend the Distress Oxides, and this panel here is some Bristol Smooth cardstock that I die cut with the Mama Elephant Cloud9 dies. To create a little bit of dimension behind my penguins, I used the coordinating dies to the Penguin Waddle stamp set to die cut some heavyweight white cardstock. I cut 2 panels and I stacked them behind my colored images. I'm going to do the same for my sentiment, and for that I die cut some white cardstock with the Mama Elephant, the Penguins Waddle coordinating dies. They also have a die that die cuts this Also Merry sentiment, which is really beautiful. This time I die cut it out of 2 layers only so that I have different heights on my card front. And this is why I decided to use cardstock rather than double-sided foam tape or craft foam, because this way I can modulate the height of the different elements on my card front without getting a very bulky result in the end. I couldn't resist and I had to add some shimmer to my background using Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl. I mixed them with water and then I used a paintbrush to create these little droplets. And then I could go ahead and adhere everything together. You can see those little images there which I colored and die cut while my Perfect Pearls were drying. I used exactly the same colors that I have on the rest of the images, and this is why I decided not to show that part, because you've seen it already basically. And I thought this would be fun if I used them like there were ornaments hanging from the top of the card. So I adhered them above my penguins more or less in a random fashion, at different heights and at different distances from each other. I have both the bows and the fish. And then I used a fine liner to draw in some strings. I'm also using a ruler so that I'm sure that I get a nice and straight line. And before going in with my fine liner, I actually made an attempt with a pencil because I wanted to make sure that everything looked right before going in and doing something I couldn't go back on. I drew in 2 teardrop shapes in the areas where I felt that the string was going to be tied around the bow and the fish, and those teardrop shapes are meant to represent a knot, which is just a cute little extra touch that I decided to add. Speaking of extra touches, you might know by now that I rarely finish a card without adding a few of those, so in this case, I'm using a white Sakura Jelly Roll pen number 8 to add some highlights to the penguins' bodies. I'm adding them to their heads basically and to their fins. I don't know if penguins have fins. And also I'm going to add some highlights to the fish bows and to just a couple of accessories on the penguins. Not to all of them because I didn't want to have too much white going on the bottom of my card. I also decided to add some glossy accents to the beaks of the penguins and I stopped there. And the reason why I added the glossy accents is that I have the shine from the Perfect Pearls on the top of the card and I wanted to have some shine on the bottom of the card too, to tie in the 2 areas together. And that's it for today. Don't forget to check out the description box down below for a link to my blog where you can hop along the Mama Elephant 7th anniversary blog hop. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and to leave a comment in the comment section down below. And if you're new here, you can subscribe for more card making videos. A big thank you to Mama Elephant for having me as part of their anniversary celebrations and to you all for stopping by. And I wish you a great day.